Kumlan and Black Gemara. Today's daf is daf Mem Daled Amid Aleph. So the concept that we're learning here is about if a Yid sells his non-Jewish slave, whatever Kanani, who's not non-Jew anymore, but ever Kanani, and he sold him to a goy or he sold him to Chutzlaret, so he basically denying the Eved the opportunity, the slave, of doing mitzvahs. We penalize him and he has to redeem him and set him free. So the Gemara, 2 lines on top of the page. We're going to talk about when actually do we penalize him. Later on, we'll discuss who do we penalize, buyer or the seller. Tana Rabbanan. We learned in a brisa, 2 lines on top of the page. Learn the brisa. What happens if the goy, you didn't initially set out to make it this way, but you owed money to a goy, and he just came and he seized the Eved as compensation. So we're talking about you didn't make the goy the Eved Kanani, you're a poitik, this is my collateral, but the goy, like your lender, just came and seized you had no money, so he seized the Eved. Or or people that came in and created false pretenses, goyim, that Yidden were under their dominion and threatened the Yid, we're going to kill you. And so he said to the goy, you know what? Choose a piece of property or take a slave and leave me alone. So he didn't do it out of willful flouting of the halacha. You just did it to save your life. In these cases, we're not going to penalize you. He's not set free. It's not your fault. So you might ask a question. You're telling me that by a chayv, even though you didn't sell a collateral, since the guy took it, because you didn't sell collateral, if a guy just took it, seized it, it's not your fault. So therefore, there's no penalty for you to retrieve this eved. Let me ask a question. We learn how to answer Beis HaMelech. If the king, if the government came and forced you gornoi, and they came and took your your warehouse, your granary, if they took it because you owed money to the government and they seized your assets, this is what they seized in chayv asset. You still have to give ma'aser. Why? Because if you sold it to the guy, so it was a yid, and therefore you try to get out of ma'aser once you chayiv. But on paris, if let's say it wasn't your fault at all, they just came and they seized it, then potter mila asa. Then you don't have to give ma'aser because it's the guys. You didn't do it to circumvent the law. You didn't do it to circumvent the law. The guy came and seized it against your will. So therefore you're potter. So what does he clear from here? If they took it because of an outstanding debt, then we say that it's considered as if you gave it to him, you chayv ma'aser. So therefore it's as if you sold it to the guy, and you should have to redeem the eved and set him free. The Marshani husband is different. In the case of the king, you owed the money to the king, and now that he took the granary as to pay off the debt, you actually have enough for your benefit. You don't have to pay him again. You paid him off. So therefore, we say it's as if you sold him. But by the case of the Eved, the issue here is you deliberately flouted the laws of the Chachamim. It's like a penalty. The fact is that you did not. The guy came and took it. So therefore, there's no need to give you a penalty. It's different set or case altogether. Toshma coming here. Rav said, if you sell your your Eved to somebody who makes up stories, someone makes up stories and he sets out all these libels against you. So and the guy made up a story. He had no choice. He sold the Eved just to get rid of that story or whatever it was that he concocted about you. It says clearly that you still have to set him free. You did it before. It's not your fault. You don't penalize you. It says clearly you do. So it says, you had an option there. Why did you have to offer him the Eved? You could have offered him any bribe and give him something else. By offering the Eved, that was your choice. And therefore, you get penalized for that choice. Goof, in fact, Omar Rav said, if you sold your Eved to this person here who concocts all these stories, accused you of different things which are not true, and you sold your Eved to that guy, you set the Eved free because you sold it. It was your choice to sell. It's not that the guy came and demanded the Eved. The guy made up stories about you, and to appease him, you gave him the Eved. You sold him the Eved. So therefore, it's your choice. You could have appeased him some other way, and you didn't. So you gave it to him willingly. So we'll have another question throughout the Gemara here. But let me ask a question. Okay, we penalize you for selling the Eved to a goy. What happens if you sort of leased the Eved out for 30 days? So 30 days you denied him mitzvahs, but then he comes right back. Do we still penalize you or not? If you sell, you go Eved to a perhang to appease him for whatever you accuse you of. Now we're understanding you didn't sell to him permanently. You sold to him for time that you can help out this guy, and that's worth money, and then we'll get it back. And yet it says the other guy is free. So we see even if it's just a temporary sale, it's considered a short-term sale. It's considered a sale, and it's a penalty. You're penalized. So your mother, who told you that this guy is gonna release this Eved or send it back to the original owner? It's talking about the case where the guy, if you gave him the slave, he's keeping it forevermore. So therefore, over there we penalize. So the Gemara, okay, what about Mochroi? Let's say you sold it to a guy, but you said Chutzim Lachta, you have no right to make him work. So if on Shabbos he won't work, on Yom Tov he won't work. Now, what's the then? Chutz min hamitz. So he tells him, except for the mitzvahs, I know that you're not allowed to touch the mitzvahs, you're not allowed to interfere as mitzvahs, let him do all the mitzvahs that he wants to do. What's it then? The whole reason why we penalize you is because you denied the mitzvah, the Eved mitzvahs. What about these cases where you made a contract that he cannot in any way impose on the Eved, that he shouldn't in any way violate any mitzvah in the Torah? Or he can't work to Mao. Or what have you sold him to like Gei Treishiv? Okay, according to Rashi, Gei Treishiv is someone who doesn't worship idols anymore, and according to Rambam and others, keeps 7 mitzvahs b'nei. He sold him to Gei Treishiv, so he doesn't do all the mitzvahs, but has a little bit of respect. Or the Yisrael Mumra, Yid, who's a Mumra who deliberately doesn't do Averis, who does Averis, Ma, what's in these cases? Lakusi Ma, what about a Kusi? Certain mitzvahs before they keep observed well, certain they don't. What's it in then? Show me a chada, we can resolve with this one. Ger Treishiv Harei Gevachavim. A Gei Treishiv is like a goy. What about Kusi Yisrael Mummer? Amri gave a Chavim. There's actually an argument. So it's not resolved because there's an argument whether a Yisrael Mummer has a status of a Yid, or Yisrael, or he has a goy because the fact is he doesn't do mitzvahs. It seems like he doesn't make a difference. The point is that he's not into mitzvahs. He's not going to affect the goy's observance. How in the world is Eber Kanani continue doing this? Even the Yisrael Mumma does not in any way impose restrictions on Eber Kanani, but he's living in a house with his Eden and nobody keeps Shabbos. How is the Eber Kanani going to become so firm that he is going to still keep Shabbos? I mean, what are the chances? Nevertheless, the machlokes, we penalize you or not. Says the Gemara further. That's a question. What about, we had this before years ago, we were worried about an Ebed, he doesn't like his current master, he throws himself at the feet of these army, these bandits, and he says, capture me, take me away from here. And his master does not have the capacity to somehow or another get him back. Not in the Jewish court case, even in the Goyish courts, they're not going to listen to this case. What about in this case here? No, the Gayos are prepared to pay for the Evid, but that's it. They're not giving him back. If he goes to collect the money, it looks now like a sale, and you're not allowed to sell the Evid. If he didn't take the money, he's not talk about it. Especially the Evid did it deliberately. But now that he could collect money, is it right or is it the wrong thing? Because it appears, the optics don't look good. He can take the money, now the value of Evid. But now if he does that, it looks like he sold it to them. So Rabbi turned Rabzik, he said to Rabzik, Puk, go out, go out and look in all the missions that you learned that you know well, and see if you can find an answer to this question. Not forget when Doki searched, Ashken, he found the following. In the Bryce it says, if somebody sells his house to a guy, if somebody sells his house to a guy, you're not allowed to sell your house to a guy because it says in Etzisrael, because it says Lo Sechanem. You're not allowed to give him any resting place in Etzisrael, even if they pay the full value. You're not allowed to. And we'll have that in Avodah Zarah. And we actually forget a mitzvah to buy from a guy because mitzvah Yishuv Etzisrael to buy properties from a guy. So if somebody sells a house to a guy in Eretz Yisrael, Doma Vasuri, you now have any benefit from the money that you got in exchange because you just violated the Yisrael of the Chachamim or Yisrael of the Torah, even like Sechanim. What about the guy who seized the house of a Yid? He went to court somebody else and he can't in any way, get the house back. And the goyim are prepared to pay for the house. They just took it. They want this location. Then you're allowed to take the money. It looks like it appears that you're buying it, but in this case, it didn't do willfully. So therefore, you can take the money. The koisev umayle be'akoyeshalahen. You're allowed to write a contract and do everything properly. At least you're taking what belongs to a yid. At least you're getting the money that belongs to you. So we see clearly that if you're not allowed to be allowed to take the money, even though it looks like you're buying, you're selling the house. So saying by everything, what I want to say that the Eved ran to these gayoses, you're allowed to take the money, even though it looks like you're selling it, but you're allowed to, just the house. So the how can you compare the two? But Dilma, perhaps, I buy a house. We were not guys. Everybody needs a house. So generally speaking, you're not going to. Nobody sells a house. We have nowhere else to live. So if he sells the house, it's like they're going to the house and he takes the money. We're not so worried. Next time, people are just going to go out and sell houses. People generally don't sell their homes. I will after the sagil, you don't need an evid to be able to continue. Is ostil because you don't need an evid. Ostil that we're worried that if it looks like a sale, maybe people will start selling. You say, look, you're allowed to do that. I like or not? That's the question. Rab Ami said from Ami Bar Nosson, Ami Bar Nosson, the Hayra will come out to all the Eden. And that is Eved Shehipel Atzim Lagayosis. If an Eved threw himself at the feet of these bandits, and the master tried, but he couldn't in any way legally extricate him. Either way, mutter little is done, if he may take the money because it's not his fault. There's no reason to penalize. The koisev of mile by koisev chom, he goes ahead and writes actually a contract. He saves at least what he deserves, what is right, and he's saving his money. If somebody sells his evet to a guy, coins him oisen. There'll be two versions as to what Rabbi Shmuel Levi said. Version number one: if somebody sells his evet to a guy, coins him oisen, we penalize him ad meya bedumble, up to 100 times the value. That's how great it is. The evet is worth $100, and you sold the evet to a guy. We're going to charge you up to $10,000 if that's what the guy wants. As ransom or to redeem. Not ransom, but to redeem. I'm going to ask dafka or lav dafka. Is that dafka? In other words, the Gemara says 100 means up to 100 times, or lav dafka. So according to Rashi, lav dafka means really it's only 10 times or whatever. It's Lashon Kuzma. Takes it all the way around. Maybe even more than 100 times. Because he says if it's less than 100 times, then what do you mean? Then why does he say 100? If he means 10, then you should say 10. Because otherwise we have no idea what Rav Shmuel Levi is trying to say. So it means maybe in lav dafka, maybe if they want 200 times as much, you should pay that. Like said, you're not allowed to sell large animals to a guy because he might make it work on Shabbos. And next thing you might lend it to him or rent him and so on and so forth, and your animal working on Shabbos. Then you defy the Chachamim. Then we penalize him ad esebedemeh. We penalize him up to 10 times the value of the animal to purchase it back, to buy it back. All right, a knas for defying the Chachamim. No, so we see clearly this says 10 times. So maybe I have it also, it's only 10 times. And 100 is only guzman. So wait 1 second. But shiny ever no, maybe ever tackle worse than an animal. Why do you call yoyma the yoyma mafkele? It's every single day that the Eved is living by a guy's house. He's not he's being his mitzvahs are being hampered, and the observance of mitzvahs is being hampered, and therefore we should penalize you for much greater than the case of the animal. Ikadamli. Others say. Up to 10 times the value. Dafka, lav dafka, 10 times or maybe even greater as well. And this both said that differently. By an animal, we do up to 100 times. If an animal 100 times, then an Eved surely should be 100 times. So 10 is just an idea. You have to pay a lot more than what it's worth. So you no, shiny Eved maybe it's different. Buy a behemoth. You pay the 100 times, you get it back. So therefore, you have to pay a much higher amount. By the Eved, you pay the money, you said Eved free. So therefore, we charge you a lot less. Says the Gemara, doesn't make sense. Okay, so the behemoth you pay 10 times the value. For an Eved, pay 11 times the value, because the 11th time is you're getting the Eved back. But in the 10 times is equal to behemoth. Why 100? It's this occurrence of an Eved is something that is rare. Things are rare. We don't really count them. So therefore, an Eved will only make 10 times. For an animal, which is very common, they would sell the animals. Every person owns hundreds of animals. So therefore, in those days, we charge you up to 100 times. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked Abasi any questions. Rabbi Yirmiyah is really enjoying this. It's all these boys. Yeah. Machar Avdoi, a guy sold a slave, right? So we penalize him, but before he had a chance to retrieve it and so on and so forth, then he died. Do the children have to pay that penalty now? Do we penalize the children that they have to not pay that penalty or not? Now we have a din that that a b'choir, an animal of b'choir, if a person gets his other animal to bite the ear of nothing, because if what happens to the animal b'choir, you have to wait till it has a mum, and then you can, sell it, whatever it is, or enjoy it. So whatever you went ahead and deliberately made a mum, so we penalize you that you have to wait for another mum and animal before you can do anything. That's called tzara moizla, bit part of the ear. So what happens if it's a limit? If you're going to say, we asked this question there, if we're talking about a kohen tzaram oizen b'chayr, the kohen, right? The kohen gets the b'chayr, but the kohen, there's no kabbanis, there's no base of migdash. What does the kohen do? He waits for a mum and then he goes and enjoys it. What if the kohen deliberately made a mum in this animal? So the din is that we penalize the kohen, he can never ever enjoy this animal. What happens if he died? Do we penalize the children as well or not? So, if you're going to say that Saram Oiza B'chor B'meis, and we ask the same question, what's the din? If somebody with the kohen bit part of the ear of a b'chor, and then the penalty is that you cannot have enjoyed the animal at all. But then the kohen himself died. If you're going to learn of the concept that we do penalize the children, and you want to equate the two dinim, maybe you should be sure that I see. Maybe over this is in the Torah. And therefore, we're much more stricter. No, so we can flip the mum on the b'chor, that should be a carbon, yeah. Because the father didn't eat the Torah, we penalize the children as well. They cannot benefit from the animal. But Abel Hacha the Isur the Rabbanon, and the whole Isur is on the Rabbanon selling an Eved to a guy, so maybe we're not that strict. The Im Tim Zalaim, the din is that we learn my cotton. If somebody, in Chalmai, you're permitted to do only work dover of it. Only things, it's machlek, it's ma'atayim, it's Rabbanon, but only a dover of it. Things where you're going to lose money. So. The question is, what happens if somebody lechatchila sets out? What happens if somebody lechatchila sets out that he pushes off the lays to do work, and now suddenly it's chalamayit? It's a davar of it. Can he do this malach on chalamayit? So he says there, if he deliberately set out to delay this work until chalamayit, but mace, and then he died, and then we don't allow him to do this. To this work, what happens is then if he died, do we cancel the children or not? Or not? Same question we have over there. If you learn by kivim lach lemoid, v'meisi died, lo cancel over there we don't cancel. So maybe the same thing by Nevid, the children shouldn't have to be penalized. Maybe we should loy avad yisuda. Over there, the fact is he died before Sukkah, before Yom Tov. If he died before Yom Tov, he did nothing wrong. At the end of the day, he did not do an issa, so therefore maybe we don't penalize the children.
What's wrong with it that he planned it?
He delayed. He could have done this work a month before. He made sure that he was busy and he left us. Exactly. The fact that the father did something wrong, he sold it to a guy. So what are we going to say? So when I answer the day comes to Rabbanon, so the question is, the day comes to Rabbanon, we only penalize the father unless he's no longer existing. We penalize the money. Isa in his here. It's like sort of the way almost like Gavra and Chefzi. Do we penalize the person or do we penalize the object itself? Now there is a big machlekes in halacha whether we know about the Yisuri Torah trait, the object itself also Isa Chefza. When it comes to Yisuri Rabban, let's say Chalavakim. Rabban, let's say no, eat Chalavakim. Is the Chalavakim also in itself is no good, or no? The Chalavakim is kosher. It's you as a person not allowed to eat it. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya says clearly that all these Rabbanon also come from Gimel Klupas at Meis, which means that the object itself is not good, is not kosher. He's a chepsa. The Siddur Hamishpat in the Shulchan Aruch rules that if someone does an Aveira de Rabbanon b'Sheigig, you don't have to do tshuva, because what you did is not wrong. What's wrong is only that it's on the person. So he said the Chachamim don't have the capacity to take a chayfetz and make it asr. That's like it says in Tanya. And therefore the Chachamim can only levy an isur on us. Don't go ahead and don't do this avera. But since he did it b'sheigig, so therefore there's no avera at all. But if it will be on the chayfetz, and even though it's not your fault, the fact is something occurred that was not right.
And therefore, according to the Alter Rebbe, would be Can't see him.
So that's a question here. Question here is not exactly the same because we're not talking about the Evid himself that later happened with. We're talking about the money that he's getting in return. A little like the Chayfetz. It's not exactly the same. So this particular knas, what is it? This is a knas. It's not a Isa de Rabbanon. Where does knas fit in? Isa de Rabbanon, let's say, are the Chayfetz. What about a knas? Or Isa de Rabbanon is on the person. What about a knas? How do we fit that in? That's the question. Amalei Tinisul, we learned. So a field, let's say he took out on your Shmiti, not supposed to till the soil in your field, but he took out all the thorns in the field and he took out the weeds. B'shviyis, tizamatzay shviyis. This is not really, it's not an Easter. We don't want you to work in the field at all, so therefore we're not going to penalize you beyond Shemitah. So you're allowed to plant the field Motzei Shemitah. What about in the Taiva, in the Daira? What about you took and you filled it up with all kinds of fertilizers? So here it's a big effort. You bought wagons and everything else and workers to bring the fertilizer from abroad. Or the Daira, you had your animals move around and to bring the fertilizer all over the field. Then we penalize you. You're not allowed to work the field even because it penalize you. And we learned Chativa, what happened? You did this, but mace, and then the person died. The son can't plant mitzvah. We penalize the man, the individual, not the object. We penalize him, but not the children. Amar Abai says, talking about knas, what do you pass it on to the children? Naktina, we have a rule. We're going to learn later on in Gittin, actually, a machlek is about a hezek she'ein nika, we had it before as well, a hezek which is not noticeable. So mahatoid is not a hezek. It's machlek is it, but the rabbanan is a hezek because we don't want you to go ahead and be mazik people. Like, for example, taking a sheretz, taking one of the 8 shrotzim, and go ahead and contaminate all the tua of your partner. Of somebody that you know. Now it's a hezek she'ein nika. You look at the fruits or the tua, you can't tell at all that it was damaged. So we don't want you. So you want every person to go and to be metame the taras of his friend. So we have a shelabai. Like the rule is teammate taras of You went ahead and deliberately set out to metame the taras of your friend. But then he died. Like we don't penalize the son. My timer hezek sheinika lishma hezek. So you didn't cause any damage. It's only knasa the rabban, only the rabban. Is the day based on what we learned before, we penalize the person. And therefore, the children don't get penalized. Says the Gemara, if somebody sells an Evet, he goes free because you denied him the opportunity to do certain mitzvahs. But with tzarich get shikhr, you need to get shikhr from who? So you would think you need to get shikhr from the first master. Merabah sheni, Tanakama holds like this: the sale was a valid sale. You didn't evade it, but the sale was a valid sale. So therefore, who's the new master now? Let's say you sold it to a Yid. So the new master now is the second guy. So we're going to penalize the second guy that he has to set the Evid free. Why we penalize the buyer, not the seller, we'll see later in this case. In the case we sold to a guy, obviously it's the Yid who sold it who has to retrieve the Yid. But if we sold to another Yid, it's the Yid has to. That's the opinion of Tanakama. Rab Shimon Gamliel, sometimes it goes out, sometimes it doesn't. Depends. It depends on what the wording. If he said, "I'm selling my Eved Mechartia LePlayan," I'm selling it to this an Israeli. I'm selling it to this Australian guy. But just because he's an Australian guy doesn't mean he lives in Australia. He lives in Yerushalayim somewhere, but it's an Australian neighborhood. But they call them Australians. So therefore, I had no intention that the Eved should actually move overseas. Then it doesn't go out. But if he said this Australian guy who lives in Australia, so clearly he set out to sell him overseas, then he has to set him, then he has to set them free. Says the Gemara, Tanya, another brisa, if he says I'm selling it to an Australian guy, that's enough to say that you intended to go over. No, we're talking about if the Australian guy then have to move overseas. Then you have to set him. You have to set him free. But if he clearly spelled out an Australian who lives in Eretz or Lud, then lo yotzer. Then he does not go out. Rashi tells us the Lud is part of Eretz Yisrael. He didn't know. If you learn Gittin, we know that right from the very beginning.
It's interesting because it's right in the center.
I know.
I mean, they were far north, far south from my country.
Rashi is talking to everybody, even people who know nothing. So the Gemara, like kasha, not a question. The two brises. Oh, the East base of Eretz Yisrael. If the guy owns a house in Eretz Yisrael, I'm entitled to say, even though he's an Australian, I thought he's living in Eretz Yisrael, so you don't penalize me if he then took him overseas. But if he doesn't have a house, he's just renting, and I said Australian, then you knew that eventually he's going to go back home if he's just renting, and therefore I said as if I sold it overseas. The original guy. He was talking about that one that he's only renting Eretz Yisrael. Then he has to go back. What happened? If you know he's renting, that's according to the Gemara's answer. If he's renting, it doesn't matter how long it is. You know, renters are not permanent. If he eventually goes overseas, if he doesn't, he doesn't. What happened to Ben Bovel? Interesting question. On a foreigner. Shenasi Isha Beit Yisrael married a woman at Israel, and now one of the things she brings in Nichsim Beloy, we also bring Nichsim Basil. Nichsim Basil, Betzim sort of goes. The husband has total right, and he can keep it after the marriage dissolves. He keeps it, and he just reimburses her, and there's a fixed amount brought in the Ksuma. Now we had a machlekes. What happens if she wants the item back and she gives him something else of equal value? Does she have the right or not? We'll see in a minute. She brought into the marriage all these servants and maids. But then after that, a few years after marriage, he wants to go back home, overseas. Now, what would it didn't be then? Do we say that it's as if this woman sold it to her husband, and therefore the Eved is set free? We're not talking right now about who has to retrieve. The Eved is set free or not. We're going to ask the question whether the one who says that she's right, she could tell the husband, I'm not giving, you cannot take it, here, take this equal value. So then it sounds like it definitely belongs to the woman still, she never sold it. And that no, that he has total rights, it's his decision. The din is with her, Kiva, that since the din is with her, she's in control, so she never sold it. Or perhaps, because what happens if she gets divorced and becomes a widow? She just takes it right back. Or do we say that since the fact is that he has the rights, to it, to the use of it, and so on and so forth, that he gets all the produce, it's as if it's his. That's enough to say that it's his, and therefore it's as if he sold it to overseas. And we can ask the same question of one that says that the husband's the right to say, I want to keep these nichsim below, and nichsim basil. Keeping the hadini makid that is his. I think keeping the kanu the goof. He doesn't own the thing itself, just the use of it. Because it does them as if it's hers. Teiku. It's a question. Amar Abu said, "Shomli Rabbi Yechim told me, Eved shiyotza achar Rabbi L'Surya, and Eved followed his own master willfully. That his master went overseas, and Surya is considered as if overseas in certain respects, and we had it before that as far as selling slaves is considered overseas because it's not the same holy status like Eretz itself. So the din, but what happened? The Eved voluntarily went with the master. We know when you go to Chutz La'aretz, the Eved, you can't force the Eved to go to Chutz La'aretz. But the Eved agreed, okay. And then then the master sold him to another Eid in Syria. And what's the Eved going to tell you? You're diminishing my opportunity to preserve mitzvahs, but you willfully went with me. The din is nevertheless, he still goes free because you sold him in Chutz La'aretz. But Tanya Rabchi said, the fact that the goy, that the Eved Kanani voluntarily went with his master, he forfeits his rights. Like Kash is not. Sorry? No, he doesn't have a choice. We learned that if Eved said, I don't want to go with you, he goes to Bezin, the Bezin will set him free. Kaifin Rabbi, we forced the master to set him free. Here the Eved agreed. Says Gemara, Kan Shadas Rabbi Lachzer, that when he went out with the master, and the master said, we're only going for a short period of time. So then if he sells him, now you made my stay permanent, then it's a knas. And Kan was it? Your master went permanently and you joined him, then you can't have time to say he sold you to another person. So the Gemara, we can talk about Tanya. Look, the Brisa to support is Yaitse Eved Achar Rabbi Surya. Even though it says Yaitse, the Gemara will say right away it means Yotza. If he went out with his master, Yaitse Lesaglos, he has to go like your ass. But man, ain't I that you can't force your wife, you can't force an Eved. Ela Yaitse Yotza Eved Achar Rabbi Surya if he voluntarily went. Rabbi Sham. And then your master sold you there. If the master went to just temporarily, we force him. Don't force him. Ravana said, Shammad made a Shmuel Tarti. We learned from Shmuel 2 dinim. First of all, the din we just said. He said, I heard from Shmuel 2 dinim. One we just said right now. This din over here. That if he went voluntarily, whatever he was chosai. And chodahach, this din you just said. The itma, another machlekes between Abba Shmuel is hamoiches sedei b'shnas Yovel atzlo. Yovel, all the fields go back to the original owner. What about on the year Yovel itself? You sold the field. Is Rav says mechura v'yotzim. Rav says it's a valid sale, but you got to go right back to the owner. Shmuel says ain't mechura k'lig. There's no sale at all. I might ask him before we get to the next piece of Gemara here. What's the difference? Let's say I sell your property together with metaltlin. We learned as a concept you can sell metaltlin together with property. According to Rav, the property was sold, but you have to give it back. So the metaltlin you acquired. According to Shmuel, there's no sale in the first place, and the metaltlin you didn't acquire because there's no sale. But what's going on here? The question is as follows: Shmuel, no sale at all. The Chada, in one of them, I've heard him say, there's no sale at all, and the money goes right back. He gets reimbursed. Selling it the going, it gets reimbursed. And one of them, you don't get reimbursed. So following, you gave the money, it's too late. I'm not sure which one. Basically said, which one do you get your money back? Which one don't you? Next, now let's see. Tony, it says in the Braisa, he sold your slave he goes free. It says right there before, which master had to set him free? The person who bought it. So it means the sale was a proper sale. Shama Mine, the second master bought it. So you can't say to the first guy, give my money back. The sale wasn't a sale. It was a sale. But we're going to penalize you, and you're going to have to set the Ebed free. So he lost his money. Lahada's vineyard, he doesn't get his money back. So obviously, when the Shmuel say you get your money back, in the case of Yavel, the Shmuel Hasim is talking about the case of Yavel. In the case of Yavel, he said there's no sale at all. You have to give the guy back his money. So the buyer doesn't lose. Rabbanan, why did he even ask the question? Braisa l'shmuel, this particular you never heard of. The image of Shmuel. So that's the question. If it's Shmuel, there's no sale. He gets the money back. Memai the ain't mechura. How do you know there's no sale? Okay, there's no sale. But why tackle mais chayzin? Why do we say the money goes back? Dilma ain't mechura, but a mais matanan. We find another case where you gave money and you know that what you're trying to do is not right. We still say the money is the other person can keep the money. Why? Because as if you gave him a gift in a very through subterfuge. You didn't, the other person wouldn't accept the gift from you, so you went and made this whole ruse. For example, me to have a mekadosh, you give your sister money for kedushin. You know that you can't marry your sister, but you don't get the money back because obviously you gave it as a gift. Rav says the money you get back. So maybe the same thing over here also. Okay, so therefore, what Gemara is asking here is like sort of arguing or asking, how do we know? Maybe Taka, the money should be considered a gift here, and why should the money come back? Second, we'll just finish. In the case here, we say the second master, you bought it, you forfeit all the money. Who's worse, the Ganef or the fencer? The first master, the guy who sold it in the first place, should be penalized, but at least half and half. Famous saying, Lav achbre ganef ele choyre ganef. The mouse is not the ganef, it's the hole. The fact that you allow the mouse to store it. Yeah, that's the ganef. Ilav achbre choyre benole. If there's no mouse, who cares if there's a hole? The hole doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. It's the mouse that did everything. So mistabrid makes sense. Heicha the iki isura. Whoever's holding on to the Isser, the case of the fencing holds on. The case over here, that this person has the evidence in his control, he should be the one penalized.
Contemporary law, that's an Isser, possession of stolen goods.
Exactly. But the guy gets punished as well. He doesn't quit scot free. Okay, have a good day.